Welcome to Outta Pocket. Here's your host, Michael Davis.
It is time to get out of pocket. I'm your host, Michael Davis. Welcome back after Memorial Day weekend. Hope everybody enjoyed the weekend, with whether it was with family, remembering the reason we do have that day set aside in each year. I'm joined right now by Shawn Lucas. He'll be on the entire show today as we got some hoops and some Top Rope Tuesday action. Carsen's joining us for the first half of the show today, and then we'll have Mike from Mouthing Off with Mike. So we'll get two Mikes on the show. He'll be on to talk some WWE and AEW as promised for your Top Rope Tuesday. But guys, we have a packed show in store for you guys today. If you are on watching us live right now, you can be a part of our show by just commenting on our YouTube channel, just like Derek Polly just did. And he asked the question, we might as well start out with this. Who on the panel said Boston in 4, because the Boston Celtics just swept? Shawn taking credit for that. The Boston Celtics just swept the Indiana Pacers last night.
The broom.
Guys, the broom is out. The Celtics are head to the NBA Finals, beating my Miami Heat, beating Carsen's Cleveland Cavaliers, and then beating, nobody's Indiana Pacers. Who's an Indiana fan at this point?
Yeah, true.
But the Celtics are on their way to the NBA Finals. Guys, I do want to talk about the Celtics' route to the NBA Finals here in just a minute. But, guys, I feel like the Indiana Pacers didn't put up a fight. As soon as Tyrese Halliburton exited the game 3, it was like they weren't putting up a fight. Carsen, you mentioned that Rick Carlisle was pulling their starters out, like just down like 16, 18 points in the fourth quarter. It's like, come on, like actually like put out an effort. Carsen, I'll start with you. What could the Indiana Pacers have done differently to make this a competitive series?
Nothing. It was never going to be a series. Really, it all came down to Boston and how they played. They were the one that played down to the Pacers. The Pacers did not play up to the Celtics. And the Pacers do have a great offense, but still, it was always in the Celtics' hand. There was really nothing that the Pacers could do. They never even should have been in those positions where they were up 18 or up 10 going into the fourth. Just never should have happened. And then you just see the Celtics playing as they should to close out those games and make those comebacks. I'm more curious about what's going to happen when they get to the finals and they're in close games with Luka and Kyrie, and they're playing two infinitely better closers, because we see them close games against teams that aren't on their level. Will they be able to do it with teams that are on their level? That's a completely different thing that they're going to have to do, and Luka and Kyrie are two of the best closers in the game. So, yeah, it was really nothing about the Pacers. It was all about the Celtics. It ended in 4 just as it should have. I think I said after game 1 that the Pacers were going to lose in 4. Don't hold me to that. I may have said it after game 2, but I did say it at some point. So yeah, that's all. It was all the Celtics.
Yeah. Now, Carsen, don't jump the gun. The Mavs aren't in the NBA Finals just yet. Even though no team has come back down 0-3 in the 7-game series in the NBA playoffs history. Boston almost did last year against Miami in the Eastern Conference Finals. They didn't have that competitive series against the Pacers. Shawn, you said you called Boston in 4. What happened? Like, Indiana just didn't show up really, especially these last 2 games.
Last 2 games they did show up, and going up in the fourth quarter when you're up 10, 16 points, even if you don't have your main guy, Tyrese, out there playing because he's injured, those guys on the team should be able to close out a game. I just felt like Boston had more veteran leadership. Tatum Alden had been, wanted to get there. We've been saying this Boston team for years should have reached the NBA Finals. So they pretty much took that to heart. And, you look at game 1 to -2, 3, and 4. Game 1, when Indy took an overtime in Boston, it's like Boston came out, game 2, 3, and 4 with a new attitude, a new approach. Like, we're not going to let this happen again. Every year, we are the team that supposed to get to the NBA Finals in the East, and whether it's Miami or somebody else, they stop us. We're not going to let it happen. And, I mean, they did what they're supposed to do. Even when Tyrese got hurt, they put their foot on their throat and flexed the muscle in the game. I said Boston for because I thought Boston was the better team. And I do like Indy, but I think Indy, even with Siakam, they just need some more veteran leadership there. Miles Turner, game 2, 8 points. Game 4, 8 points. Game 1, 23. Game 3, 22 points. You just got to have some more consistency over there for Indy to be able to get past this. I mean, they beat a good New York team. They played their best game against New York in that 7-game series. But I think once they got the Boston, it's pretty much it just started watching everything crumble and crack over there.
Yeah, and so Indiana's season ends a little bit earlier than they wanted. It was so frustrating because, like, I remember last week being on the show and being like, hey, guys, like, Indiana's hard to stop. Like, when they're scoring 130, 140 points a game, like,
Right.
not a lot of teams are beating them. I thought they were going to at least get one game, maybe even 2 games at home, and that just wasn't the case. And now for Boston, like, this seemed like a very easy route at the end of the day because the Boston Celtics beat Miami, but they did it without Jimmy Butler for that series because he got hurt in the last play-in game. They beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, which was honestly their biggest competition. And then the Cavaliers fired their head coach because for some reason that's a disappointment. We had Carson Renton for a while last week on that. And then they beat the Pacers, who were like, okay, but like once you took Tyrese Halliburton off the floor, they just were not the same. Carson, do you think this might be the easiest route in NBA Finals history?
Yeah, so I thought it might have been. I did a little digging just to find out which one I actually thought. I think this is the second easiest path ever. Definitely the easiest in my lifetime or in the last century, but or not the last century, but since 2000. I think number one would probably be the 86-87 Lakers. They played 2 below 500 teams, the 37-45 Nuggets and the 39-43 Supersonics. The one team that they did beat that was above 500 is the 42-40 Warriors with Sleepy Floyd as their best player. And I like some Sleepy Floyd, but I mean, come on, that's an easy path if I've ever seen one. You're playing 2 under 500 teams, and nowadays we don't even really see teams under 500 in the playoffs that often. So I'd have to say that, but with all the injuries that happened this time and just the talent that Boston has and the talent deficit that every other team they played was, I'll say this is the second easiest path ever.
Shawn, what do you say?
It was second easiest path. Carson beat first to the first one, but I mean, you said the best, Mike. No Jimmy B, no playoff Jimmy round 1. Jimmy B, the boss, is the gift that keeps giving. He finds a way to beat him every time he plays them in a series of 7. Then you go round 2 to Cavs. Like Carson said, probably the hardest competition they had, but then Donovan Mitchell, not game 5, Boston was able to win. Then you go to Indy, who a team that we thought even if Boston swept them in 4, could put up a good fight. And put up a good fight game 1. Tyrese goes down game 3, out game 4. Boston just walks over them. So, I mean, they had it. I mean, you don't want to say a cake route, but, I mean, Easy Street Lane wasn't that far for them to take that turn on to get to the NBA Finals. I mean, Easy Street Lane on the left, pretty much Made in the Shade Boulevard on the right.
Yep. So, and it's also the teams – sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you. It's also the teams that they avoided. They avoided the Bucks. They didn't get to play them. And Giannis and Chris Middleton and Dame were all hurt. But that team
76ers.
They avoided the 76ers. Like, those were the 2 teams that people said, like, those are going to put up the best fight against Boston. Bucks and Celtics were what everybody was expecting since the beginning of the season, and we didn't even get to see it, So they really did. They avoided the best teams in the East, except they avoided the best teams in the East. Right. And that is just a product of, they got the number 1 seed, and maybe they're showing that regular season matters a little more than some of these other teams. Like, if the Lakers wouldn't have got the 7th seed, they probably wouldn't have been facing the Nuggets and would have went further. So I think we're starting to figure out that regular season actually matters a little bit, which is good. I don't like that there are like a few months of basketball where people don't really take it seriously until the playoffs.
Well, I think Boston ended up having a chip on their shoulder with how last season ended. They were the number 2 seed. They were playing a play-in team in Miami, and playoff Jimmy went off. But I feel like that's the reason why the Boston Celtics are going to the NBA Finals. We'll have Mike here in just a second, talk some Top Rope Tuesday. But before I let Carsen go off, we do have a game tonight. We have the Mavericks and Timberwolves. We insinuated that it could be Dallas and Boston in the NBA Finals. Either Luka Doncic or Jason Tatum get their first NBA ring. That's what it's looking like right now. But we were so high on the Minnesota Timberwolves. They had a 4-time Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert. They had Karl Anthony Towns, who would seem to go on playing at a natural position at the 4. And then we had the emerging star and Anthony Edwards, who was drawing comparisons anywhere from Dwayne Wade, who's my favorite player of all time, to Michael Jordan, who is the greatest basketball player of all time. So there was a lot of hope in Minnesota. And after a few days, it looks like there's all the hope in Dallas, which is kind of crazy to think about because Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic are playing really well together. Kyrie seems a little bit more motivated now in Dallas than he has been, honestly, since the Cavalier days. Carsen, from what you've seen from Kyrie Irving, but not only on the Dallas side, but like Minnesota's side, like how do both teams end up in this position where it's a 3-0 series lead for the Dallas Mavericks?
Yeah, it's been completely on Anthony Edwards and Karl Anthony Towns. Just like over East, where Jason Tatum was not having a good playoffs, and now these during the conference finals, he just went crazy. It's been the opposite. Ant and Cat have just been awful, where they were incredible in the first 2 series. They've been outscored by 24 points by Luka and Kyrie, so it's really just like those superstar duos going off, and Minnesota is just losing terribly. Cat has shot 27.8% from the field in this series and has shot 38.5%. So, like I said, they have just been awful and just outplayed in every single way. Luka and Kyrie are the better closers. And really, like, they're taking away their greatest strengths, which is weird. Like, Ant has not been the same guy attacking downhill. And he hasn't been as good of a jump shooter. And then Cat is just, I don't even know what happened to him. Like, he's out of control driving downhill. His shot is missing. Like, they're not playing as good a defense. And this is what I said, like, the Mavs had an easier path, I think, than the Nuggets, just in that they have 2 guys that are just so hard to stop on any given night. And then also they're just losing in the paint, like getting completely outplayed there. They're losing the rebounding battle by 11, which throughout 3 games isn't that bad. They're losing the points in the paint battle by 26, and it was 36 before last game. And I'm putting that on Rudy Gobert. You're 4 times Defensive Player of the Year. Like, this is what you're supposed to prevent. And Dallas doesn't even have a lot of good interior players. Derek Lively is Derek Lively is great on the defensive end, but offensively he has not been good. He actually has been. He's been decent this series, but he's mostly just catching lobs from Luka. Like, Lively does not have good touch in the paint. Gafford is not very good offensively on the interior. So this is completely on Rudy Gobert. He's got to be the Defensive Player of the Year, like he's supposed to. I think that this series hurts his legacy more than last series did, because he was getting destroyed on defense, but that's because you're against Jokic. Now you're against inferior guys, and you're losing.
Well, and Carsen, us, Shawn, we're all Duke fans here on the panel. Producer Desmond Johnson's a UNC fan, so while he takes an off day and he'll be back later this week, either on Thursday or Friday, we'll go ahead and get our Duke fandom out. Derek Lively, he was the missing piece for the Duke Blue Devils this year. And for him to go, I thought he needed another year to improve his offensive game, and Duke needed that interior defensive presence. But him on Dallas especially in these playoffs, I've seen him emerge to where he goes 6 for 6 and 14 points in a playoff game against Rudy Gobert, the four-time defensive player of the year. That was a Booker T reference. We'll get Mike here in just a second. I mean, Derek Lively's went to another level to where, Shawn, it's so disappointing how Rudy Gobert's performed this series.
I got to eat some crow. Last week on Out of Pocket, I was out of pocket. I said, for anybody watching, the fan base, anybody, if you think the Mavericks were going to beat the T-Wolves, then I don't know where you're at. But obviously right now, the Mavericks are playing great. I can't take nothing from them. This has never happened, and I'm going to be definitely out of pocket saying this. No team has ever been 3 and down and come back to win a series best of 7. Being that I picked the T-Wolves, I can't change my pick. I got to ride with it. So I'm going to say tonight the T-Wolves are going to win. But, you know, Luka and Kyrie right now are just playing insane. I mean, and Ant-Man is just not having his best game. And this is when, if your best guy's not having his best game, Cat and those other guys got to step up. Carson said the Cat has not stepped up in this series. You know, Rudy, defense player of the game, and, you know, you're looking like, did we make a mistake giving you this title this year? You know, maybe we should look at Victor to give it to. Just been a bad series for the T-Wolves. And I just got a message for the T-Wolves. If any of them are watching, go back to Ball Center in Denver. Find that T-Wolves team that beat the champs in the best of 7. Bring that tonight to Dallas and try to get this thing, at least try to force a game 7, because now you got to play every game is our last game of the season, starting tonight.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Shawn. I think that if anybody has a chance to come back from down 3-0, it's got to be these Timberwolves. I mean, overall, they're the better team, and we know what Ant and Cat can do, and we also know what Luka can do. He can stink it up, you know.
Right.
And Ant and Cat can be great if they can find that somehow, and Luka reverts back to what he was all throughout the playoffs before this series. Then the Wolves will win. I mean, all of the games have been close,
right?
And your 2 best players are playing awful. So that just says to me how great this Minnesota supporting cast is, and how, like, this series isn't over. Naz Reid said it. If anybody can come back from this point, it's this Timberwolves team.
Well, and of course, their post press conference after the last series of, like, we've been losing for 10 years. Like,
yeah,
Cat's voice gets really high at that point. We'll have to see. I personally hope Dallas does complete the sweep. I'd love to see a game 7, of course, of Minnesota coming back, but it would be great to see Dallas fresh. They had their series end up in 4 versus Boston. I don't want an energy overlap, but Carson, we'll let you pop out of here, and we'll welcome in Mike from Mouthing Off with Mike to talk Top Rope Tuesday, WWE, AEW. Mike, I hope you're doing good. And I'm doing fantastic because there was a lot of wrestling to watch this weekend. I had an event on Saturday. Shout out to the first ever logo creator of the first ever Out of Pocket logo. He got married this past weekend. Shout out, Caleb. Much love. Appreciate you, brother, and all the support you do for all the content I do for Tobacco Road Sports Radio. Top Rope Tuesday. We can't do Tuesday without talking some wrestling. We had WWE's King and Queen of the Ring event in Saudi Arabia. We had AEW Double or Nothing in Vegas, both very memorable for their own reasons. So I wanted to just go ahead and ask you guys, and Mike, I'll put you on the spot first. Who do you think had the better weekend? Was it WWE or was it AEW? And you have to pick one.
I would say, if I have to pick one, probably AEW had the better weekend. They had a lot more returns. There was a lot of buzz for, the matches, especially Anarchy in the arena. So I think AEW won the weekend, and I think it's exactly what AEW needed right now to keep momentum for the summer.
Yeah. Shawn, what was your reaction to that question? Who do you think did have the better weekend?
I got to go AEW. And the only reason I'm saying that, WWE had a great showing this weekend. But if you look at that pay-per-view, King and Queen of the Ring, you take away that Randy Gunther match, it was just another WWE house show pay-per-view, like In Your House back in the 90s. Some decent matches, but I think AEW, like Mike said, just brought a little bit more to their pay-per-view versus where WWE just said, hey, We'll get by with this one. We'll do the show in Saudi Arabia. We got the contract. Get through it. Get to the next one in June. Clash at the Castle. So AEW won this week.
And I have to agree. Like, if you guys haven't watched either one and are avoiding spoilers, I apologize, but I have to bring this up. WWE was a little predictable.
Right.
Of course, there were a couple moments where I didn't expect Nia Jax to beat Lyra Valkyria for Queen of the Ring, but AEW just hid out the surprises right at the start. You know, Juice Robinson showing up at the start, and then you have Adam Cole come out, and who interacts with Adam Cole? It's the returning MJF. Like, they just started like sprinkling. And of course, I think AEW's pay-per-view was a lot longer. So there started to be this like little lull in the pay-per-view, but they started hot. They had that lull in the middle, and they ended hot when it came to the triple main event. It was absolutely phenomenal. Even the Adam Copeland Malachi Black match, which I'm starting to learn reports that just broke right before we went on air, that Edge actually broke his fibula, so he might be out for a while, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you got a 50-year-old dude jumping off the top of a steel cage, going through a table, and halfway to the move, he decides, he's going to go for an elbow drop and put all of the weight on his legs. So I would say that probably was the silliest moment from the show, because I don't know why we would do that at his age, but for the love of the game, baby, I love it. For me, realistically, the lull in the pay-per-view almost put me to sleep. Mike's not going to like it, but it's the truth. It was Jericho's match. That match didn't need to be on that card. That could have main evented Collision the night before, been fine. Could have been on Dynamite this weekend, totally fine. Didn't need it. Kind of dragged the momentum for 20 minutes there. So other than that, very good pay-per-view from AEW. I'd say one of their strongest ones in quite some time. King and Queen of the Ring, yeah, predictable, but still very solid. Kept things moving with WWE. I thought we got good matches. I thought Cody and Logan was a damn good match. I thought Nia and Lyra was a fantastic match. I thought Jade and Bianca had a great showing on the pre-show. They're starting to get some really great chemistry between the two of them with a lot of their tandem tag moves. Look, Wayne, I'm sorry. I respect Jericho. The learning tree.
Hey, he's a learning tree now. Like, he's bringing in Big Cass. They introduced Brian Keith, which I thought was really interesting, because if you remember last week on Dynamite, they had the Wayne's cracking me up in the comments. Wayne, Derek Polly, shout out C Prince, by the way, go Duke. We had a Duke panel of me, Shawn, and Carsen on the show. It was. I like the learning tree, because especially like playing on last week of like Shibata got in the match, Hook got in the match, who was the leftover, this young guy, Brian Keith. I feel like Jericho can elevate the guys who he's surrounding himself with. Shawn, do you agree?
I do, but I'm kind of like Mike with Jericho right now. And I'm a Jericho guy. I like Jericho a whole lot. I think he's probably on my Mount Rushmore, one of my top 5 guys of all time. But it's starting to feel like now with Jericho, how many times can he keep reinventing himself? We got the Painkiller. That was a good reinvention when he came with AEW. It's just starting to feel like he's running his course. And I hate to say that because I'm a Jericho guy, but I feel like so. But I mean, good pay-per-view on both ends. AEW, a lot of people upset that they put the belt on Mercedes Moné. A lot of people feel like that AEW does that to a lot of WWE top talent that cross over and put the belt on them quick. But I look at it with AEW. You got a lot of I got friends as WWE fans that do not watch AEW. So if you're AEW, you want to track these guys, and some of my friends who don't watch it, what do? Put the belt on Mercedes Moné, and they will tune in, start watching, see what's going on. So good pay-per-view. I mean, got to give a shout out to Valkyria. She ate it an hour later at Queen of the Ring. Wow. When I seen Nia hit that, I was like, oh man, she is out for a couple of months. She ate it like a champ. But good pay-per-view, Logan Paul, I think this guy right now to me is the purest, best guy we've seen come into business that did not come from NXT farm and did not come off the indie scene. And I think Cody said something on Friday night to me that I think if Logan really took it to heart, he could elevate himself to be a top tier guy in the next couple of years if he start doing more matches on TV, SmackDown. So good pay-per-view on both ends. I mean, Becky and Liv, you saw that coming. I mean, once again, don't want to spoil Raw if nobody's watching, but you saw it coming that was going to happen. So good pay-per-view on both ends. I just feel like we got a lot going on with wrestling right now. One thing I didn't like on the AEW show was I'm not the Elite guy. You know, I used to like the Elite, but I mean, I'm just tired of the Bucks. That's just me. I'm bucked out.
Hey,
I'm bucked out right now. And, you know, them beating Team AEW, I'm a Danielson guy. I'm an FTR guy. I'm a Darby Allin guy. Them getting the win, I was like, oh, man, come on again.
So you had to have them win. I mean, the Elite lost to Sting and Darby Allin at Revolution. They did the job to them. But, like, if you miss the boat, like WWE missed the boat with Nexus back in 2010, Nexus lost to Team WWE, just like a compilation of some of their talent on the roster, and that halted Nexus's momentum. They didn't want to repeat that with the Elite. Wayne agreeing with Shawn about Logan Paul. And Logan Paul, I've been very critical of. I never like celebrities just coming in and just hogging the spotlight. Logan Paul already has had 2 title matches in Saudi Arabia for the world title. And he did pretty good. I'm not going to lie. He has actually put an effort to like, hey, I'll be there more than your typical celebrity. I'll promote it on my podcast, and they have a partnership with Prime. Mike, do you feel like Logan Paul's actually, you know, taken to wrestling like a fish does to water?
Yeah, I mean, have you watched him? I mean, have you watched him from day one? Yeah, he's taken to wrestling like a fish to water. He's to the point where it's like, I don't like him, but like I respect him. Like he's got my respect. And when he goes out there and he grabs a mic and he starts talking, you know, I want to, you know, scratch my eyes out, but that's the point, you know. That's what he's good at. He's good at making fans react. He's good at getting heel heat. And I say the more the merrier, you know, for Logan Paul. The more matches he gets, the better off he's going to be, the better he's going to be, the quicker, you know, we could be discussing Logan Paul as a top guy in wrestling in 5 years, which is a sentence that, to be honest, I never thought I'd be uttering from my mouth at any point, whether I had a podcast, whether I didn't have a podcast, whether I was just a fan. I never thought I'd be uttering the phrase, you know, Logan Paul might be a top guy in wrestling one day. But it's true. He might.
Well, Max saying Okada, I feel like that's a comment of itself. Like Okada's been at the top of the game for so long. And that's why I'm kind of liking the Elite when it comes to AEW. Like it has Okada, it has Jack Perry, which I saw coming, Jack Perry and Young Bucks, like using that like unspoken disdain for one Chicago boy who's now in Stamford, Connecticut. Like it's working. I'm honestly, I'm not a personal fan of Logan Paul, but you know, the way he reached out to Trevor Lee, formerly known as Cameron Grimes, after Cameron got released, the way that he is like taking the sport a little bit more seriously than others in the past. Like this isn't a Snooki situation,
right?
Where Snooki teamed with, I forget who she teamed with.
She teamed
because it was Snooki and somebody else versus John Morrison and Trish Stratus.
It was Snooki, and if I remember correctly, it was Dolph Ziggler.
Oh, was it Dolph?
Was it Dolph? It was somebody. It was somebody like that.
Dolph.
I know it was Trish. Trish was involved.
I think it was Dolph. It's not a Mr. T and Hulk Hogan WrestleMania 1.
Hold up. It was I can't even believe I slightly remember this. It was John Morrison, Trish Stratus, and Snooki teaming together versus Dolph Ziggler and Lay Cool at WrestleMania 27.
It was Lay Cool.
So this isn't a it's a thank you Booking Like a Mark, who always supports the show, especially on Top Rope Tuesdays. If you're not following them on Twitter, go follow them on Twitter. we'll hopefully get some booking like the Mark, some collaborations going on with the mics very, very soon. June looks a little bit easier for me, by the way. So let's get something going. Derek agreeing, fair assessment about Logan Paul. And we'll see how he continues to improve. Speaking of going following us on Twitter, you can go follow Mike at MOWM_podcast. He releases wrestling podcasts. I release wrestling podcasts. That's why Out of Pocket isn't on air on Wednesdays, but we'll be back Thursday. Tomorrow, I'll be talking about AEW and WWE more in depth. I'll probably have some podcast Smitty as a guest tomorrow on Drop the Mic, so be sure to stay tuned to that. Before we do go, thank you, Shawn. Thank you, Carsen. Carsen just popped back in the comments. Bill Walton passed away yesterday. That was tough to hear, especially if you haven't seen the tribute from Jay Billis or Stephen A. Smith. Not only losing a basketball legend, but also like a good friend to them. So super, super sad to hear about Bill Walton's passing. Out of Pocket will be back Thursday. Wrestling Pod Drop the Mic drops tomorrow. Go check out Mike's wrestling podcast, Mouthing Off with Mike. But yeah, until next time, go follow us on our social medias. Shawn has his own Twitter handle, Sports with Luke. He covers some really great stuff. And if you're looking for somebody in the wrestling world who could maybe do some commentary, some producing, some story writing, Shawn is your guy, especially if you're on the East Coast of North Carolina. Shannon and I will be commentating Squared Circle Champions on the West Coast of North Carolina. And if you have anything in Arizona that you need, Mike is your guy. But for Michael Davis, Shawn Lucas, Carsen Williams, and Mike from Mouth Off of the Mic, this has been Out of Pocket with Michael Davis, and we will see you back here on Thursday.